In a quiet village surrounded by dust and tradition, the people lived simple lives, waking each day to the rhythm of survival and routine. Among them was a young girl, unnoticed by many, walking barefoot along the narrow paths of the village, carrying her burdens in silence. Each morning, she worked harder than most, fetching water under the rising sun, her strength hidden beneath her quiet nature. But not everyone saw her strength. Some only saw weakness. A group of young women often laughed at her, their voices filled with mockery as they pointed and whispered behind her back. She said nothing. She kept walking. But silence does not mean the absence of pain. Alone on the dusty paths, she carried not just water, but the weight of rejection. Even in the busy market where others gathered and shared laughter, she stood apart, unseen, unheard. And when the day ended, she returned to the only place she could call home, a small, worn hut that reflected the life she lived. Inside, there was little to comfort her, only silence and thoughts she could not share. Yet even in her loneliness, she held on to something, a quiet hope she could not explain. And then, one day, everything began to change. The village stirred with excitement as a royal presence approached. The king himself had arrived, surrounded by guards and honor. The people gathered quickly, bowing with respect, eager to be seen. But far from the attention, the young girl continued her work, unaware that her life was about to shift. From across the crowd, the king noticed her. At first, it was just a glance, but something about her held his attention. He watched her more closely, a feeling growing within him that he could not ignore. And then he saw it, a mark, a sign he had not seen in many years. His heart trembled with recognition. Without hesitation, he called for her. Confused and unsure, the girl was brought before the king, her steps slow, her eyes lowered in respect. He looked at her carefully, searching her face as if trying to confirm something only he could see. She spoke softly, her voice unsure, answering questions she did not understand. But with every word, his certainty grew. And then the truth could no longer be held back. Before the entire village, the king revealed what no one expected. The girl they mocked, the girl they ignored, was his daughter, his long-lost child. The air shifted. Gasps filled the crowd, and for a moment, time itself seemed to stop. The girl stood frozen, her world turning in a way she could not yet understand. The king looked at her, not with power, but with love. A father who had finally found what he lost. And those who once laughed fell silent, their pride gone, replaced with shock and regret. Slowly, the girl stepped closer, drawn not by command, but by truth. Tears filled her eyes as a new reality began to form. In that moment, everything she had known began to change. And by the setting of the sun, she was no longer just a girl of the village. She was something more. As she walked away from the life she once knew, she turned back one last time, not in sadness, but in quiet reflection. The path ahead was uncertain, but no longer lonely. With the king beside her, she stepped into a new world, a world of royalty, a world of truth. When she arrived at the palace, she stood in awe of its greatness, a place she had never imagined would belong to her. Inside, every step felt unreal, as if she were walking through a dream. But the dream was only beginning. The next morning, her transformation began. The girl who once wore worn cloth now sat as attendants carefully prepared her for a life she was born into. Piece by piece, her old life faded, and her true identity emerged. When she finally saw herself, she could hardly believe it. She was no longer hidden. She was no longer forgotten. She was a princess. Standing beside the king, she faced the world with a new strength, her presence no longer overlooked. Back in the village, the news spread quickly. Those who once laughed now spoke in whispers, their hearts heavy with regret. And when she returned, she did not return as the girl they mocked. She returned as royalty. Standing before them, she said nothing, because she no longer needed to. Her presence alone spoke louder than words. And in the end, as the drums of celebration filled the air and the people rejoiced, the girl who once had nothing became everything she was always meant to be. For destiny may be hidden, but it is never lost.